2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Wow. Well, good evening, everyone. What a great crowd. Thank you so much for being here this evening. Certainly, the countdown is on for Caucus 2016. So, certainly my pleasure to welcome all of you here this evening, as well as Governor Christie. And he's had a full agenda while he's been here in Iowa. And just to kind of give you a little bit of an update, some of you may recall, of course, he was elected governor in January, or he was sworn in January of 2010, and then re-elected in November of 2013, and certainly took on some tough issues in his state, but with his leadership and bipartisan cooperation, he has accomplished much. He has led the reform to improve education, public education, ensure that every child has quality education, as well as reduce their property taxes and reform their state pension plan and health system. And he's brought back integrity and accountability to his state. While he has spent a lot of time in Iowa lately, he's a lifelong New Jerseyan and has certainly deep affection and devotion to that state. So please join me in welcoming Governor Chris Christie.
Appreciate it. All right. Well, thank you. Thank you all for coming. Merry Christmas. Happy New Year to all of you. I had the great opportunity yesterday to drive from O'Hare to Davenport. So I figure that makes me like an honorary Iowan at least, right? To have done that during a snowstorm was a lot of fun. But I'm happy to be here. This is my third town hall meeting today. I'm going to do 3 more tomorrow before heading home on New Year's Eve to go back home to New Jersey and be with Mary Pat and our 4 children who are all home. Our 2 oldest are college students, so it's great to have them home. Our son Andrew's 22. He's a senior at Princeton. Our daughter Sarah is 19. She's a sophomore at Notre Dame. And then our 2 youngest, go Irish. And our 2 youngest, Patrick is 15. He's a freshman in high school. And I'll be home in time for his New Year's Day hockey game. He's a goalie, so being a hockey dad is one thing. Being a hockey goalie dad becomes completely more intense when they're shooting those things at your kid. And then our daughter Bridget, who's 12 and she's in the 7th grade. So I'm looking forward to getting home on Thursday and seeing them and ringing in 2016, which in the Christie household we hope will be a big year. My wife told me today, when I called in to kind of check in and let her know what was going on, I said, "What are you doing?" She said, "I'm cleaning out my closet." She said, "I'm working on getting some of the clothes out that I really don't use anymore. And I'm getting the girls to do the same thing so we can donate them to the local mission for folks who need them." And I said, "That's great." And she said, "And she goes, I looked in your closet." She said, "It might be something you want to think about working on when you get home." And I said to her, "Well, listen, you know what I'm doing out here." I said, "So how about when we're getting ready to move next year, I'll clean out the closet and we'll do it then." So I just want to talk to you about a couple things real quickly, and then I want the rest of the time to be spent on you asking me questions about whatever's on your mind, whatever you'd like to talk to me about. I saw this morning in the news, and some of you may have seen this too, that Al-Qaeda is reestablishing terrorist camps in Afghanistan. And that it's because the Taliban is making more progress in Afghanistan and allowing Al-Qaeda, as they did before, to set up terrorist camps, to train terrorists to come and attack America. This is the folly of the foreign policy of this president and his Secretary of State, who's now running to replace him. They removed all our troops from Iraq after all of the money and blood that we spent in Iraq. And what happened? ISIS took over in Iraq, and now we have ISIS in Iraq and in Syria, and creating havoc and killing folks in Paris and in San Bernardino, and who knows where next. And he wants to pull all the troops out of Afghanistan, too. And the same thing will happen. Let's just remember something. We're not in for permanent war. But let's remember that we still have troops in Korea. Why? Because we fought so hard to bring peace and stability to that region that keeping some American troops in Korea helps to preserve the peace. We still have troops in Europe since the 1940s to preserve the peace that we worked so hard and so many people sacrificed to give us. When we do these things, when we make these decisions, whether you agree with the decisions or not at the time, when we do these things, that means that if you pull out American troops and leave nothing there, that's a vacuum. And bad people fill a vacuum. And this president doesn't begin to understand that, neither does the Secretary of State. She said in a debate last week in New Hampshire, I was in New Hampshire during the Democratic debate, and so that night I got done campaigning and I watched the debate. She actually said to the American people, looked in the camera and said, we're exactly where we need to be with ISIS. So here's what I'm not calling her Secretary Clinton anymore. I started the day after that. She is Secretary Happy Talk. That's what she is now. I'm going to call her that for the rest of the campaign. She is Secretary Happy Talk because the slogan of, she's now adopted a behavior that's consistent with the slogan for this Obama administration. Do you believe me or your lying eyes? Because we see things and he tells us it's not what we think. He told us last week, the President of the United States said that the reason he does not understand the anxiety of the American people about terrorism is he doesn't watch enough cable news. Imagine the President of the United States saying something that ridiculous. Then he gave another interview where he said, well, what I really meant was that cable news covers terrorism too much, and it's making the American people anxious. I know the President's in Hawaii right now, enjoying vacation, and so, but I'm sure that he's, we live stream these things on the internet, so I'm sure the President's watching me right now. He's a big fan of mine. I know he copies a lot of my stuff, and he really likes me. So I know. So, Mr. President, I want to explain something to you if you're watching tonight, okay? The American people are anxious about terrorism because the American people have seen the dead bodies killed by radical jihadist terrorists. They've seen dead Parisians, and they've seen dead Americans. And they are nervous because for the first time in years, they don't believe that their government's protecting them. That's why they're anxious, Mr. President. So let me say this. I'm the only person in this race, the only person who's actually had experience doing this. President George W. Bush named me the U.S. Attorney for New Jersey on September 10th, 2001. I accepted the job that day. The next day, let me tell you what happened. I'm not just going to tell you, of course, that it was the worst terrorist attack in American history. Well, let me tell you what happened to us. That morning, on September 11th, I decided to take the day off from work for my law firm. So I'm getting this new job, and I'm going to take a little time today to really think about what this is going to mean for my life and my career. My wife did what she had been doing every day for 20 years at that point. She got up. She left the house by 6 in the morning. She drove to the train station. She took the train to Jersey City, New Jersey, where she got on the PATH train, which took her to the basement of the World Trade Center, where she went up those big escalators, got to ground level, and then walked the two blocks to her office. And I took our kids to school that morning. And I got back from dropping them off at school. At that time, the two that are in college right now were 8 and 5. And the one who's now playing goalie was a year old. And he was home with me. And I got home, I turned on the TV, and I saw that first building was on fire. And I called my wife right away, and I said to her, so what's happening? And she said, well, they said it's a commuter plane that flew into the building. None of us are worried. We're at our desks, we're working. I hear the fire trucks coming. I'm sure they'll take care of it. And so we moved right on to talking about other things, like what I was going to do during the day, how the kids were in the morning. Did they eat breakfast? Did I remember to make sure to give them their vitamins and all the rest of the stuff that, your wife would check in on you on because she knows you're a guy and you forget all that stuff. And then the second plane hit the second building while we were on the phone. And she said to me, they're telling us we have to evacuate to the basement. I'll call you as soon as I can. And she hung up the phone. And I didn't hear from her again for 5.5 hours. And I want to tell you that they were the longest 5.5 hours of my life. During that period of time, and I kept trying to call her cell phone, and I couldn't get through. And during that time, I got a call from my kid's school. And they told us that since so many of the children had parents who worked in Lower Manhattan, that they felt like they had to tell them about the attacks. So they said, so be ready when you pick the kids up. They're going to ask about their mom or dad. So as the time kept ticking by and I didn't hear from her, there were 3 things running through my head, everybody. And none of them had to do with being the U.S. Attorney for New Jersey. The first one was like, what would I do without my best friend? I mean, we met in college. We met when she was 18 and I was 19. And we got married when I was 23 and she was 22. And at that time, we had already been married nearly 20 years. And I was thinking about that. The second thing I was thinking about was, if I don't hear from her before I have to go pick the kids up, what am I going to tell them? I don't know anything. But to tell them I don't know will make them even more scared. But I can't lie to them. And I just kept going through my head, like, what am I going to say as a dad to an 8-year-old and a 5-year-old? And then the third thing I was thinking was, if I have to be, what kind of single parent am I going to be? Like, am I ready to raise these 3 children, 8, 5, and 1, by myself, without my wife? About 10 minutes before I was leaving to go pick up the kids, the phone rang. And it was the greatest phone call I've ever gotten in my life. It was Mary Pat on the other end of the phone. She had left that building after both buildings had collapsed. And she and a group of her friends found T-shirts in the basement. They wet them completely and wrapped them around their faces because you could not breathe in Lower Manhattan from all the dust and the soot and the debris. And they could barely see. So they held hands together and they walked north until they got to Midtown, where she finally found an operational payphone where she called me to tell me she was okay. That night, I drove down to the Jersey Shore because the only way to get off of Manhattan that night was by boat. And so she took a boat from the east side of Manhattan to the Jersey Shore to a place called the Atlantic Highlands. And I'd picked her up there a couple of times before through the years when there were commuting problems on the trains. And usually we were able to pull right up to the dock, watch the boat come in, and then pick your loved one up and then go. They kept us 3 blocks away, so I was waiting, just waiting to see her. And I saw this person coming down the street with a blanket wrapped around them that looked like Mary Pat. And as she got closer, it was her. She was soaking wet from head to toe. I said, what happened to you? And she said, well, when we came off the boat and they told us that we told them we came from Lower Manhattan, the local fire department was there and they hosed us down with a fire hose from head to toe so we didn't bring the contaminants into the state. And then a local department store was there with blankets so that we could put blankets around ourselves because it was cold. She was soaked from head to toe, but it was the greatest sight I had ever seen. She never looked better than she looked that night. We got home that night, and she got a phone call from one of our neighbors, a woman who was looking for her husband. Mary Pat had helped her husband get a job down on Wall Street. And she asked, did you see Frank? Did you see him when you were leaving? Frank had worked for a company called Eurobrokers, which was located on the 44th floor of World Trade Center 2. And she said, no, we hadn't seen Frank. I said, well, I'm sure he's okay. I'm sure he's just at a hospital somewhere, and he hasn't had a chance to call me yet. Well, you all know, without me telling you, and Frank never came home. And we knew them from our parish, and the gym in our parish is now named after Frank. We got a call later that night from the mother of our 8-year-old son's best friend, telling us that her husband had gone to work that day at Cantor Fitzgerald, the 105th floor of the first tower. No one came out alive. And I've seen that young man now. He's grown up with my oldest son. I've seen him for the last 14 years grow up without a dad. his 2 younger siblings as well, excuse me, and his mom without a husband. This isn't theoretical to me, everybody. That young man, since Facebook started, every year on his dad's birthday, just changes his cover page to a picture of his father at a family wedding. And he just writes one line underneath it. He says, "Dad will never forget you." I fear this country is forgetting his father. This country is forgetting Frank. This country is forgetting what these people will do to us if we put our guard down. And this is not a theoretical thing for me, everybody, because when you're governor of New Jersey and your state lost the most people on 9/11 than any state other than the state of New York, we live every day with the widows and the orphans for 14 years. We've watched them go through every monumental moment of their life without their mother or their father. High school graduation. Now it's going to be college graduation. They're going to get married. They're going to have children. You don't need to tell me how important this is, because I live it every day. I lived it as U.S. Attorney for 7 years after 9/11, investigating terrorists, prosecuting terrorists, and sending them to jail before they killed anyone, because that's what we have to do now. We can't wait till after. After there's too many dead bodies. We got to catch them before. You don't need to tell me, because for the last 6 years as governor, I've watched these folks continue to grow up and grow old in my state, and the pain and the suffering that are part of their everyday life. Because you can only imagine what it would be like to suddenly just send someone off to work and have them not come home. They're not ill. They just get killed in a senseless murder by people who are killing them just because they're Americans. That's why it was so wrong this summer. So wrong when the president and Senator Cruz and Senator Paul all voted to take power away from the NSA for us to be able to track these folks and to be able to catch them and connect the dots before they do something. It seemed easy this summer. We hadn't had a terrorist attack for a long time to score political points that way. It was wrong. If I'm president, we're going to fix that. We're going to change it. And the reason that it's so important now in this world to have someone who's actually done this behind the desk in the Oval Office is because no one's going to have to explain this to me. I'm not going to need on-the-job training. When the FBI director comes in on the first day of my presidency, on January 21st of 2017, to give me my first briefing on national security, he's not going to have to introduce himself because we worked together. He was the U.S. Attorney in Manhattan when I was the U.S. Attorney in New Jersey after 9/11. Jim Comey and I know each other well. And what he'll know is that I understand exactly what he's saying and that I will have the backs of the men and women who work for him every day who are trying to keep us safe, not accuse them, as this president has done every time when there's a question about law enforcement. He takes the other side. He thinks the worst of our police officers and our federal agents. It demoralizes them. It'll be good to finally have a president who believes that our police officers and our federal agents are doing things to protect us, not to hurt us. And so I'll get to your questions now, but I will end with this. There's nothing more serious and no more important than this. Remember the days after September 11th. No airplanes flying. Stock exchange closed. No sports, professional, college, amateur, kids sports. Everything that makes this country's heartbeat stopped because we no longer felt safe. Every time when the plane started flying and that plane flew overhead, people's heads jerked to the sky. They wanted to know, is it staying up there or is it coming down? I don't want to go back to that type of country, but we are headed there unless we have a president who's going to take this seriously and knows what they're doing. This is not the time for on-the-job training, everybody. This is not the time for another United States senator who's never managed a thing in their lives and never made a decision of consequence that they were held accountable for. We gave the most complicated management job in the world to a guy who never managed a thing in his life. And now, the Secretary of State, who's a United States Senator, wants to follow him. And we got 2 senators in our party who want to do it, who are in their first term in the United States Senate. the biggest thing they've ever managed in their lives is a staff of 30 people. This is not the time for that. This is not the time to elect somebody who's going to sit in that chair in the Oval Office the first day, spin around and go, gee whiz, isn't it great to be president? Right? We need somebody who's going to sit in that chair the first day and has been there before, understands what it's like to sit in a chair of consequence like that and have to make decisions as a federal prosecutor, as a governor of a big and what I lovingly call unruly state. Right? You need somebody who's made those decisions under tough circumstances, who can make a difference the first day, not on a hope and a prayer that they might learn the job sometime into it. This country is too messed up after 7 years of that to afford to have that type of inexperience again in the Oval Office. So I know this campaign's been entertaining so far. Been entertaining for me, right? We're now down to 12 people because apparently Governor Pataki has dropped out. So now we're down to 12 from 17. But it's been entertaining. We've had everything, right? We've had governors and former governors. We've had senators and former senators. We've had business leaders and a character. We've had it all, right? We have the whole thing, and it's been entertaining to watch. I can guarantee you that you've had moments sitting in front of your television of real laughter and real head-shaking moments, too. And I'm glad you were entertained. I've been entertained at times on that stage. I've heard some things on that stage I never thought I'd hear in my life, let alone in a presidential campaign. But here's the thing now. There's 34 days to go to the Iowa caucus. We're not electing an entertainer-in-chief. We're electing a commander-in-chief. And showtime is over. It's game time. It's game time. And you all, along with your partners in New Hampshire, are going to be deciding how to narrow this race from 12 to 4, because that's what's going to happen. My guess is that once February 9th passes and February 1st passes, there'll be 4 of us left. The other 48 states are only going to get to pick from those 4. You all are going to make that decision. It's game time now. That's why I'm so glad to see so many of you here tonight, because you make these decisions. Not the pollsters, not the pundits, not the political prognosticators, not the know-it-alls talking on cable TV every night. They don't get to make the decision. You do. I had a guy in New Hampshire a few weeks ago say to me, I feel powerless, Governor. I looked at him, I said, I don't want to hear that from you. If you were from Montana, I can understand that. You're a New Hampshire Republican, and you feel powerless? Let me guarantee you something. I said this to him in New Hampshire. I said, Iowa Republicans and New Hampshire Republicans are the most powerful people in the world right now. The most powerful people in the world. Because you're going to pick. You're going to narrow this race by 2/3. And what you do here on February 1st and what New Hampshire does on February 9th is going to give whoever are the best people in that race the momentum to go and win the Republican nomination for president. And the last thing I'll say to you is this. If you give me that honor of being the Republican nominee for president, I will guarantee you this. I'm from New Jersey. And you know what that means. Hillary Clinton will not get within 10 miles of the White House. You make me the nominee. I will guarantee you that. She strays into Maryland one day. That's about as close as she'll ever get if I'm the nominee, all right? So I want to answer your questions now. Listen, we make this really easy. There's only one rule in my town hall meetings in Iowa. There are 4 rules when I do town hall meetings in New Jersey. But you people don't need 4 rules. You only need 1, okay? The 1 rule is raise your hand, I call on you. And then you ask me whatever question you like. And this is not like some other town hall meetings I've heard about here in Iowa, where you have to write down your questions right before you come in and hand them to a staff member. And then the staff members read them and they decide which ones the candidates really like. And then they give them those. And then we pretend that we actually had real human interaction. Now, it would be wrong of me to give the name of the candidate who does it that way. Be wrong. But her initials are Hillary Rodham Clinton, all right? So we're not going to do it that way. You raise your hands, I call on you. So raise them up. Yes, young lady, right there. And he's going to give you a microphone right behind you so everybody can hear you.
All right, good to see you again. I saw you in Anamosa.
All right.
About a month ago, and I got the
A
last
return
question.
offender.
Yeah.
Excellent. Good.
I got the last question there, and Wow, now I get the
Now you get the first one,
question.
all right.
I do. I have a friend who is, my question is about the Affordable Care Act.
Okay.
Your stand on that. I have
Sure.
a good friend who has a pre-existing condition and is fortunate that he's able to be insured now because of the Affordable Care Act. So it's kind of a, love it, hate it kind of thing.
Sure.
Where do you stand on that? What would you
Here's,
do?
here's where I stand on it. There are three aspects of the Affordable Care Act that most people now universally agree on. And that is that people with pre-existing conditions should be able to buy insurance and be covered. That people up to the age of 26 should be able to stay on their parents' policies if, in fact, they remain not employed or not able to obtain insurance another way. And third, that your insurance should be portable, so that if you get it, you should be able to take it from job to job or place to place across state lines if you like it. We can do those three things without having this entire Obamacare mess that we have of the federal government running the health plans of 50 states. Now, let's take our two states, for instance, and here's my stand on it. I would abolish Obamacare. I'd keep those three aspects, abolish Obamacare, and let each state make the determination on how they should run their health care plans. Here's why. Let's take Iowa and New Jersey, right? Not only are we in different places geographically, but they're very different states, even though we're the Garden State, as you know, so we have a lot of agriculture too. We are the most densely populated state in America. You are spread over 99 counties over a much larger landmass. A lot of the problems of access to health care in Iowa are about distance. Where can you find a specialist to deal with your particular problem? Where can you find a hospital that will deal with the particular issue you're dealing with? And how far do you have to travel to get there? It's about access for distance much more in Iowa than it's about access for cost. Cost is an issue too, but distance is a much bigger and more difficult issue. In New Jersey, we are only that big, and we got 8.9 million people stuffed into that sausage, right? So we trip over a hospital every 4 miles. You can't drive around New Jersey and not find a hospital. With us, it's totally driven by cost. That because we live in a high-cost area of the country, healthcare is even higher cost than the normal high costs. So how could a plan developed in Washington fix New Jersey's problem and Iowa's problem? Just common sense tells you it doesn't work. So I say, give each state a year. Repeal Obamacare, say Obamacare will be gone in a year. But in that year, each state has to come up with their own plan of how to deal with access and cost and all the rest in their state. So Governor Branstad and the legislature here in Iowa, they get a year to come up with a problem, with how to fix the problem in Iowa. I have complete confidence in the fact that the governor could do that. He could fix that problem if we gave him the tools. We just say, listen, you make the choice. We don't put all the strings that Washington puts on it. Governor Branstad, you're now the longest serving governor in American history. You should be, of all people, Terry should be able to figure this out, right? He'll figure out what's best for Iowa, and he'll put forward a plan, get the legislature to work with him on it. And then the other reason that's good is if the plan's not working exactly the way you want, you have an opportunity to change it because it's done locally. So you could talk to your local state rep, your local state senator. You can write to the governor. You could go to the governor's meetings that he has around the state and talk to him about it. You try to do that in Washington, you'll never be heard, ever. It's too far away. They're too remote. It's too big. And so practically, I believe that's the way we fix the problem. And you can make those other things requirements, and we should, and most people agree on them, and I don't think people would argue about that anymore because they see that's an important aspect to the American people. And you'll have to pay for that, but people are always willing to pay a fair price for a service that they're getting that they really need. The second part of this is philosophical. I mean, listen, the Constitution, the 10th Amendment to the Constitution says, if the power is not listed here as being given to the federal government, it reverts to the states. I've read the Constitution. I don't see health care anywhere in there. I mean, we need to stick to what our Constitution tells us to do, which is government that happens closest to the people is best for the people. The further it gets away from the people, the less control we have over it, the more it controls us rather than the other way around. And with this government and this president, and maybe Hillary Clinton next, that government will get bigger and more controlling and making every healthcare decision for you. And eventually, it will be a completely government-run program. And if that's so great, why do cancer patients from Canada come to America to get treatment? If single payer government control is so great, why do cancer patients from Canada come across the border and get their treatment in the United States? Because our system is better. So that's the way I would deal with Obamacare. We need to get rid of it, give the states a year to come up with their own plans, and let each state come up with their own plan. Because what's good for New Jersey may not be good for Iowa, may not be good for Wyoming, certainly wouldn't be good for California. Right? They're all different. Let's use the diversity of our states as a strength, not as a weakness, and that's the way I deal with Obamacare. All right. What's in the back?
Welcome to Iowa.
Thank you, sir.
Hey, can I buy you a spot of refreshment?
Yeah, I may need that after we're done. Third town
Alrighty.
hall meeting of the day. We may take you up on that.
Hold you to it.
Thank you.
I know security of the country is an important issue. I see another one, and it's around $18 trillion.
Yes, sir.
All right, as all of us standing here in this room, what can we do to reduce that debt? What would you do to encourage us like what FDR did during the war?
I think you have to demand the truth from the people you vote for. Right? See, we've gotten in this debt problem because nobody wants to hear the truth. Because we want to hear we can have everything and we don't have to pay for it now. We'll pay for it later. You know, it's like if we came to this place every night and the owner allowed us to have an account and, you know, we just kept running up that account. And he kept saying, so when are you going to pay it? And we'd say, well, no, next week. When I get paid next week, I'm going to pay you off. And then we come in the next week and we don't pay it, and he keeps serving us. Well, you know, if you keep getting served and you keep getting what you want and you don't have to pay for it, people get pretty comfortable. And if we're not going to tell the truth to each other and demand the truth, then we're going to continue down this awful spiral. And the truth is some ugly stuff. Like in New Jersey, for instance, when I became governor, we had an $11 billion deficit on a $29 billion budget. It was the largest deficit by percentage of any state in the country. So what do? Right? I sat down and we cut 800 programs. 800 programs out of the state budget. I did it once a week for 6 weeks, 3 days a week for 6 weeks. I just went through the budget line by line and said, how much does this cost? What exactly is it? And they'd look at me and go, stay or go. Stay or go. Now, I have to tell you, it did not make me the most popular boy in town, right? Because every one of those programs has a constituency. So like you'll come to me and tell me you're concerned about the $18 trillion in debt. And I say, okay, I got an idea. I'm going to cut this program. And you go, whoa, hold on a second there, Governor. That program actually is one I use and I really like and I think it's very worthwhile. So, but there's lots of other programs for you to cut, so cut those. Like, okay, so I'll cut this one. And then this guy pipes up and says, well, wait a second. I like that program. That's a very good one. Don't cut that one. You can't, you got to block the noise out. I got letters, emails, phone calls, thousands of protesters on the steps of the State House. But I was not going to increase the size of government, continue to raise taxes in a state that's already overtaxed. I had to cut back. That's part of what we need to do at the federal level. But here's the second thing. Don't let anybody tell you that we're going to cut our way out of $18 trillion in debt. It's not going to happen. It's too big. We've let it get too big. And so the other thing we need to do is to get our economy growing much faster than it's growing. It's only growing at 1.5% right now. We need it to grow at 4%. If it grew at 4%, we'd wipe away a decent chunk of that debt just through growth. But that means we got to change our tax system. We need to change our regulatory system, and we got to make those tough decisions too. We got to get rid of all these special interest loopholes and deductions in the individual tax system. And I say we go with 2. Home mortgage interest deduction and charitable contribution deduction, and that's it. And then we can lower our rates, people can get more of their own money, and by the way, you could probably fire half the IRS agents, which wouldn't be a bad thing, right? And we need to spur growth that way. Put more money in your hands for you to spend it and invest it as you see fit, create jobs, and grow our economy. Ronald Reagan did it. John Kennedy did it. We've seen it be done before. Bill Clinton did it. Right? It can be done, but we got to make those decisions to balance our budget, to spend frugally, and to put more money in the hands of the people of this country so they can create economic activity. Because look at the $18 trillion of debt like an accordion. If you push an accordion just from one side, you can't close it. It won't work. You got to push the accordion from both sides. So spending and growth have to be both pushed. We push both, we'll be able to knock down the debt. Last thing is, I had someone ask me in New Hampshire 2 weeks ago, Governor, how will you eliminate the debt during your presidency? I said, I won't. It's too big. 4 years or 8 years is not enough time. But just think about how much damage you can do. This president has run up more debt than every one of his predecessors combined. Every president from George Washington to George W. Bush combined accumulated less debt than Barack Obama has accumulated in 7 years. So it's going to take us a long time to dig out of this hole, but it didn't take very long to dig it and make it much worse, to bring it from 9 billion to 18 billion. Trillion, rather, I'm sorry. 9 trillion to 18 trillion. 9 billion, 18 billion, we could take care of that. 9 trillion to 18 trillion. So that's what I would do. And what you need to do is demand that your elected officials stop worrying about making you happy by telling you what they think you want to hear. Tell them you want to hear the truth and that you will reward people who tell you the truth. That's the only way you're going to get people that deserve these jobs. Because otherwise, they'll just sing you a happy tune, like Secretary Happy Talk, right? And think that's the way to get into office, and then they'll worry about it when they get there. And every time that happens, everybody, it costs us more money. It just does. Yes, young lady right back there.
Hi, I'm a junior at Lynmore High School, and a fellow student and I, we're the presidents of the Civil Debate Club. I was just wondering what your plan would be, because I know you've done a lot for education in New Jersey. What would your plan be for the whole United States? And also, can I please get a picture with you?
You know, first, of course, the picture comes first. Come on out here. Make your way over here. How about coming this way? These guys will get up and let you come through, I think. No? 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 No can do? No. Oh, yeah, we don't want to do that. All right. We'll deal with the picture a little bit later. We'll find our way. One of our guys will get you to me. So here's what we do on education. On education, first we need to get rid of Common Core around the country. All right? And we need to let individual communities decide how to teach their kids, and states decide what the standards should be that those communities need to reach for. All right? Second, we need to make parents more involved in the day-to-day of what's going on. All right? There's no substitute for that. Now, in situations where the parents are not available, and that can happen for a bunch of different reasons, we cannot leave those children behind. And so we need to fashion our curriculum and our teaching methods to the kids that are placed in front of us. And so if we have children who come from a single-parent home, or children who come from a dual-parent home, but those parents are working 3 or 4 jobs and they're not home to help them with homework, to encourage them to read and all the rest of it, those kids, we need to have longer school days in America, and we need to have a longer school year. The fact is the rest of the world has gone to a longer school day and a longer school year, and we're still working off the agrarian calendar. Now, I know I'm in Iowa, okay? But here's the thing. I don't think across America that most kids, when they leave school in June, are going and tilling the fields. Some might still do it here in Iowa, but in the main, that's not happening anymore. And the fact is, we need to have a longer school day and longer school year, and I would advocate for that because we are falling behind the rest of the world. We're 24th in math and 27th in science. You cannot remain the world's #1 economic power if you're 24th in math and 27th in science. Third, to empower parents, we need to give them choice. And parents should be able to choose how to educate their children. They're the ones with the biggest stake in it, more than the government, for goodness sakes. They love their children and care about them more than the government ever could. And so let parents decide, do they want to send their kids to a public school or a parochial school? Do they want to homeschool? And be supportive of those decisions. We spend plenty of money on education in this country. We need to give parents choices. I'm a public school kid. I went to public school from kindergarten through 12th grade. And I got a great education in my public school system that helped to prepare me for the rest of my life. Mary Pat went to parochial school from kindergarten to 12th grade. So when we got to have our children and it was time to decide where to send them to school, I was a public school guy, she was a parochial school girl, and all our kids go to parochial school. See? So now you know how decisions are made in the Christie household. But the fact is that we had the ability to make that choice because we had the financial wherewithal to make that choice. It's not right for only people with the financial wherewithal to have the right to make that choice. If you believe that a religious education needs to be part, and you want it to be part, of your child's everyday education along with reading and arithmetic and all the rest, then you should have the right to make that choice given what you're spending on education. If you want to send your kid, you should have the right to do that. I think that empowers parents and will make them even bigger part of education from day to day. Last thing is we need to hold teachers accountable. And the fact is that the overwhelming number of teachers in this country are really good, hardworking folks who do a great job. They really do. And they don't go into this to get rich. They go into it because they love kids and they want to have an impact on kids' lives. But we also know that the unions in this country have been a destructive force in that, because the unions exist not to protect the high-performing teacher, because the high-performing teacher doesn't need any protection. The high-performing teacher, the parents are carrying that teacher out on their shoulders every year. They love that teacher. They can't do enough for that teacher. And the school district, who knows they have a great teacher, wants to keep that teacher and keep him or her happy. They're protecting the folks who are not performing. I'll give you a case in New Jersey. We had a teacher just recently who had been late to school over 2 years over 100 times. Over 100 times. And that school district fired that teacher. The union grieved that case, and the guy got reinstated. Now, what do you have to do to get fired, man? If any of you showed up late to work 100 times over 2 years, you're gone. You're fired in any other business in the world. So accountability has to be that we demand the very best in front of the classroom for our kids. And that if the teacher's doing a great job, I want them paid and paid well and treated well and supported. But if there's teachers who are showing up late 100 times over 2, get out, man. And stop having a system that protects those people. We have a rubber room in New Jersey, in the Newark School District, our worst performing school district, where you have teachers who we pay not to teach because we can't fire them, but they're so bad, we don't want them in the classroom, so they show up to work every day to a conference room, and they read the newspaper and watch TV because we can't get rid of them. The union system in this country is destructive in the public sector to quality in education being demanded for every kid, no matter where you are. So that's the other thing I would change. We do not need unionized teachers in this country. We need teachers who are protected by a civil service system, that's fine, but not by unions. What unions do in this context, in the public sector, is they're there just to protect the least performing, not the best performing, and we need to demand more for the money we're paying and for what we need from our kids. So those are 4 things I would do on public education. And we'll get that picture before we go. Yes, sir, right there. He's coming over to you.
So kind of along that same education line, I'm going to take it a little bit higher. My son just finished his first semester at the University of Iowa Public State School, and he's already incurred more than 25% of the debt that you incurred after Seton Hall. My wife and I both work full-time jobs and part-time jobs, and we're doing okay, but we found that it seems like it's easier to pay for tuition if you're super rich or super poor, and we're neither. And so I just want to I've read your take on like private sector contributions and kind of the paying off a percentage after you graduate. But even if 30%, if that took care of 30% of the college people right now, that would still leave over 14 million people in the position we're in right now.
Right.
So I guess I'm asking you, what's your take? I mean, I don't mind, well, I do mind. My tax dollars going to people when I can't afford my own kids' education.
Yeah, no, listen. It's a huge problem. And let me say, I've tried to approach this from both the debt side, the student debt side that you talked about, and from the cost side. So let's deal with both. I have 2 suggestions on each side. On the student debt side, for those who take out loans, It's unconscionable, and if you haven't had this experience, you may not know, that students cannot refinance their debt. Whatever interest rate they get stuck with, and it's usually well above market. And so they're paying much more in interest to pay back their loans than they should have to if they were able to refinance it with a private institution without these restrictions on them. We should let them do that. It's unconscionable for us to be making money off our kids, or their families for that matter, who are just trying to get a better education. So I would change that. Second, you alluded to this. I believe we have to set up national service in this country, beyond military service, to allow young people when they're getting out of school, if they want, to spend 3 or 4 years of their life contributing to our country in ways that are bigger than their own interests, and that they get credit every year for that to knock off a year of their loans.
Can you give examples of what type of?
Oh, hey, listen, this could be everything from rebuilding infrastructure in the country, if that's what you're good at, could be going into education and working in troubled school districts to help to supplement the extra time we need to help those kids, and anything in between those. We have lots of needs in this country that we can't afford to pay for, but that if we had bright, ambitious young people who are willing to dive into those things, you look at like the Teach for America program, there are kids going into and dedicating a period of their lives to just going into very challenged school districts and being teachers for 3 or 4 years, then moving on to another career. I think we should be having that at all different levels and give people an opportunity to work off this debt. The country will be a better place for it, and our students will be better for having that experience where they're doing something that's bigger than just what paycheck they're bringing in, but they're also getting a benefit from it. I think the country will be better off for it, communities will be better off, and the students will be better off, because then when they decide what they want to do with their career, it won't be driven purely by paycheck. And when you have that much debt, a lot of your career decisions are going to be driven by paycheck. What do I have to bring in to make this monthly payment on these student loans when they come due? I want folks following their passion, if they possibly can. All of us have done jobs that we've done just for the paycheck. That's part of growing up. That's part of life. We go to work certain days and certain jobs because we just need the paycheck. And we may not be in love with it. But we know that the best times of our careers are the times when we're doing something that we feel passionate about and getting paid for it. I want them to have the freedom to do that. The bigger problem, of course, is the cost side. So let me talk about that. So I mentioned I have a Princeton kid and a Notre Dame kid. Any of you doing the rough math in your head, right? Don't bother, I'll tell you. This year, $122,500 between the two schools. And by the way, in case you're wondering, no Ivy League bias here, Notre Dame's more expensive than Princeton. Notre Dame is $62,500, Princeton is $60,000. Now, let me tell you why the schools have us by the throat, and they do. So my daughter goes to Notre Dame. She's wanted to go to Notre Dame since she was 12 years old. She has totally drank the Kool-Aid, everybody. Let me tell you about the way they rope you in from the beginning, right? So when she got her acceptance letter to Notre Dame, you know what the first line of the acceptance letter is after Dear Sarah? The first line of the acceptance letter, and it's 2 words for the entire paragraph. It says, welcome home. Welcome home. I mean, listen, raise your hand. How many are Catholics in this room? All right, I'm a Catholic, okay? Then you get a letter this summer from Father John Jenkins, the president of Notre Dame University, right? You get the letter this summer in July, and this is not an exact quote, but this is the gist of the first paragraph. It says, we want to thank you for the blessing you've bestowed upon us by entrusting the souls of your children to our care for their education. Now, listen. You close your eyes after reading that paragraph, you can hear the theme from Rudy playing in the background, right? Right? You hear it, you close your eyes, you can see Touchdown Jesus, the Golden Dome, the heart's beating, and for those Catholics in the room, what's the next paragraph? The money paragraph, right? Because this guy's a priest. They know how to separate you from your money as well as anybody. So the next paragraph is, that's why we're so pleased to tell you, that tuition at Notre Dame this year will increase only 3.9%. Now, this is in a 1% inflation world, everybody. 3.9%. He then says, which is the lowest tuition increase annually at Notre Dame in 40 years. Think about that. A 3.9% tuition increase is the lowest increase in 40 years. They said that's total student cost will then be $62,500. Now, everything else we do in the world when we spend money is based on our evaluation of value, right? So it's like, okay, I like that Altima up there that's on the screen, right? And I like the Nissan Rogue, and I'm going to go look at them, and then they're going to tell me how much they'll sell it to me for, and then I make a decision. Is the Nissan Rogue worth X dollars to me? And if it is, I pay it, and if it isn't, I don't. Imagine what would happen if after I got that letter, Mary Pat and I sat down and we said, you know what? Notre Dame's just not a value anymore. It just isn't. At 62.5, it's not worth it. And we call Sarah down. 19-year-old Sarah comes down to the kitchen table and we say, you know what? Mom and Dad made a decision. We know you love Notre Dame and everything, but it's not a value for us anymore, so we're going to send you to X school, whatever it is, that's less expensive. I never had this conversation, but I have a pretty good idea of how it would go from there. There would be the crying, the stamping of the feet, the yelling, the going upstairs, the slamming of the door. You're ruining my life, right? And what would happen next? Mary Pat and I would sit at that table, like you've sat at your table, and we'd look at each other and say, what do we need to do to get her back there? Here's the problem. The colleges know that too.
Right.
They know it. He's a Hawkeye now, right? He's got Hawkeye gear. The Hawkeyes went 12-1 in the football season, right? He's at, right? I mean, you know, they had a great year. He's at the games. He's having a ball. He loves his classes. He's a Hawkeye now. I mean, you go to him like, listen, you don't really think University of Iowa's a value anymore. You're going to go here. I don't know how that would go. I suspect not well, right? And so they know that. So how do we put market forces back on these prices? I say there's two ways to do it that are doable. The first one is we need to demand that they tell us exactly what they're spending this money on. Now, here tonight at this great establishment, you order some food, and the waiter comes back to you later with a check. If you flipped over the check and it said food, $50, you'd call the waiter and go, hey, dude, come here for a second, would you? Could you write down exactly what we had and how much each of it was, and then I'd be happy to pay the bill? I just got done paying the Notre Dame second semester bill, so it's fresh in my head. I mailed the check on Sunday before I left to come here on Monday morning. It's 3 lines. Tuition, room and board, other fees. 30,000 something, right? You wouldn't pay the bill here if they gave you that kind of bill. They send you that bill, where do I send the check? So first thing we need to do is demand that they detail for us how they're spending our money. I got in a lot of trouble talking about this over the summer because I said, you know, there's an epidemic of rock climbing walls on college campuses, right? Yeah, thank you. Now, I don't mind the rock climbing walls at University of Iowa or Iowa State because you all don't have a lot of rocks, right? So I get it, you know, you want a rock climbing wall. There's not a lot of rocks here in Iowa. I get it. But I went to the University of New Hampshire, and they got a rock climbing wall there. They're the granite state. They have as many rocks as you have corn. All right, they got rocks everywhere. They got Mount Washington. I say to the students at UNH, go outside and climb rocks. You got them all over the place. I used it as a ridiculous example. Now, of course, then the press reacted immediately to that, right? And they said, this is Christie's assault on college fitness. Now, listen, everybody, take a look at me, all right? I've assaulted fitness in many ways in my life. This was not one of them, okay? We need to get in the detail, because if they did, they'd be embarrassed.
But wouldn't you be asking the federal government then wouldn't the federal government kind of be interfering with the state government in that?
Hold on for a sec. I'm going to tell you how I'm going to do it.
Okay.
Your instinct is right, but I think you're going to like the idea when we get to the end of it. We say to the colleges and universities, you need to detail it. You need to let us know what you're spending this money on. Stop building monuments to people's egos all over these campuses, because that's what they're doing. And stop with these crazy, crazy salaries that you're paying, and stop with the 15 vice presidents for paperwork, okay? Stop with this stuff, because if they tell us that, we're going to start to revolt. We need to revolt against this. Second thing is you should be allowed to unbundle your bill. So here's what the services are that we're offering and what the cost is. Here are the ones my kid's going to use. Let me tell you something. There's 2 rock climbing walls at Notre Dame. I can guarantee you, knowing Sarah Christie, one thing for sure. Her body is never climbing one of them in 4 years. It's never happening, right? So if 98% of the people say no to the rock climbing wall, they're not building it anymore. If they say no to the 3rd chemistry building, they're not building it anymore. We need to do those things to put market forces on it, because the traditional way we put market forces on are interfered with by our love for our children. And they know it. How do we get this done? The federal government says, you don't have to do this. You don't have to be transparent, and you don't have to allow us to unbundle. But if you don't, you cannot participate in the federal student loan program or the federal student grant program. You want taxpayer money from us? Then you play by our rules. And you let families who are incurring this debt and paying these things out of their savings and out of their hard work, you let them see where the money's going after it comes from them.
Why do you think that hasn't been done yet?
Because it's hard. Because the colleges and universities will go crazy. Crazy. Can you imagine? Can you imagine us going to them and saying, we get to unbundle your bills? Oh, the uncertainty in our budget. We won't know each year. Yeah, I know. My budget's uncertain every year too, buddy. You know, your and your wife's budget is uncertain every year. Depends on how your business does. Depends on how your boss takes care of you. Depends on how many hours you're able to work. It depends on whether you keep that part-time job or you don't. My budget's uncertain too, so why is your budget uncertainty so much more grave a problem than mine? I think they'll comply because what they get out of the federal student loan program, the federal student grant program, dwarfs what they get from almost everything else, unless you're talking about the wealthiest institutions in this country. So that's what I think we need to do, because we have no market forces left anymore. They're taking advantage of our good nature. Because what you want more than anything else is for him to get the best education he can and to be happy while he's doing it. And they know that too. And so if he's a Hawkeye now, man, forget it. You're not ripping that away from him. The same way the little leprechaun's not coming off my daughter's sweatshirt. It's not happening, man. That little leprechaun's staying on there. And my son loves Princeton, and he loves what he's doing there, and he wouldn't want to move either. So we need to enforce this in a much different way. And if they're going to get federal money from us, from our taxes, then they need to give us the information that gives us the assurance that they're investing our money wisely, and they're investing it in ways that makes his education better and gives him a greater result when he goes out in the world. Because if he feels that, he'll be less reluctant to pay back those loans. But right now, when it's all getting piled on your back and you don't even know whether you're really getting the value you're supposed to get, it puts great stress on us as parents, and by the way, puts great stress on him for when he gets out too. So that's the way I deal with that problem. And by the way, I've done now, between Iowa and New Hampshire, I've done 60 town hall meetings as a candidate for president. That question has been raised in 58 of the 60. So this is on people's minds in this country, and it is stressing out families, and we need to do something to deal with it. So I'm glad you're number 58 of 60 to bring it up. All right, yes ma'am, right there.
Certainly concerned about the Islamic State and terrorism, but the fact of the matter is every year 30,000 Americans die from guns in this country. What would you do about gun violence?
Well, I would do 2 things about it. First, I'm a former prosecutor, and what I know about the overwhelming majority of gun violence that happens in this country, it is done by criminals who are committing crimes in our streets of our cities and our suburbs every day, who don't buy guns in gun shops, going through background checks, but who buy them in the black market and scrape off the serial numbers and then use it, kill somebody, dump it, and buy another one. And so part of what we need to do is to enforce the gun laws we have already. We have an enormous number of gun laws on the books in this country that we're not enforcing every day, and not aggressively. When I was a prosecutor and the U.S. Attorney in New Jersey, the direction came from the President of the United States and the Attorney General that we want you to aggressively investigate and prosecute felon in possession cases, meaning anybody who has a felony is not permitted in this country under federal law to possess a firearm. We have felons possessing firearms all over this country. And by the way, the first offense is a mandatory minimum 5 years in federal prison, no parole. The second offense is 10 years. We put, in those years, more felons in possession of firearms in jail than any other period of time in recent history in our country, and it lowered crime. So the first thing we need to do is to enforce the laws against criminals that are already on the books. The second thing we need to do is to deal with an issue that's much more difficult and sensitive to deal with, and that is mental health in this country. If you take away the normal street crime, and you look at the cases, which unfortunately those don't get nearly the publicity they should get, but the ones that get the publicity are the mass shootings. Virginia Tech, Sandy Hook, Aurora, we all know them by the names of the towns that they occurred in. You look at every one of those cases, and every one of those cases involves a person who has a deep mental illness and whose family and friends knew, because they all get interviewed afterwards. Oh yeah, you've seen the interviews. We knew he had this problem, or either he was being treated and he was not compliant with his medication and we didn't do anything about it, or he wasn't being treated at all. That young man who killed his mother with her gun in Sandy Hook and then went to that school and killed those children. That was a deeply disturbed young man who everybody in that neighborhood who knew him knew had a problem. Here's why we're not dealing with it. Because we're scared of it, because we don't understand it, and it's stigmatized. So for instance, you have some other kind of disease, we talk about it. You know, your kid, God forbid, comes up with cancer, we talk about it. We get them treatment. We do everything we can, and we're not ashamed to talk about it. Somehow we think that mental illness reflects on us. No one thinks cancer reflects on them if their child gets it. But if their child has a mental illness problem, you know, that must mean I was a bad parent. I didn't do the right thing. There's something wrong with me. So we don't talk about it. When we don't talk about it, we don't pursue treatment. When we don't pursue treatment, one of the awful results is this. And you recall that most of those young men, and almost always young men, who are involved in this wind up taking their own lives as well. So we need to do a few things. First, we need to make sure that it is easier for physicians and family members to involuntarily commit members of their own family. These physicians need to know they have the right, if the person's speaking out in a violent way or is non-compliant with their medication, they have the opportunity to put them involuntarily into a hospital for treatment. Because right now, they're scared to death of being sued. The laws are really cloudy. And so the easiest thing for them to do is turn around and walk the other way and hope that nothing bad happens. We need to have a conversation about this in the country out loud, and the president needs to start it. Because if you start talking about mental illness and treating mental illness, and the president's talking about that, and we're making more mental illness treatment available to folks, then people will start to come out of the shadows. But until we do that, they won't. And listen, the next gun law is not going to change any of that. That young man got a gun from his mother, who had no mental illness, an absolute legal right to own the gun. She went, she bought it, she got it, she kept it in the house. He got it. We had the folks in San Bernardino had absolutely a legal right. They had no record. They had a legal right to buy a gun. They went and did it. And then they got two other ones from friends of theirs who had the right to buy a gun. The point is, any of these new gun laws, be very careful. They're like cotton candy. You know, when you see it, it looks good, and you taste it, and it tastes good, but then 2 minutes later, you can't remember whether you ate something or you didn't. It's over. That's what happens with these gun laws. They get big headlines, and then nobody's enforcing them, or we're enforcing them against the wrong people. We're enforcing them against people who want these things for their own self-defense, or for hunting, or for collection, and they're law-abiding people. And by the way, the last point on this is, there is a Second Amendment. And the Second Amendment says that people have the right to bear arms. And I don't think that the Founding Fathers were confused, and I don't think they made it second by picking it out of a hat. The first one is about freedom of speech, freedom of the press, freedom of religion, and non-establishment of religion. Pretty big things. They made that number 2. I don't think it was a mistake. So we need to have some respect for that in our Constitution as well. That honest, law-abiding citizens should have a right to defend themselves if they feel like they need to. They got to comply with the law. They got to go through a background check. They have a waiting period, all the rest of that stuff. But in the end, if we make it harder and harder for the good people, believe me, as my experience as a prosecutor, it doesn't slow down the bad people. It doesn't slow them down. And so my view is let's deal with the underlying problems. Let's get at the bad folks and put them in jail more aggressively and support our police officers doing it. And secondly, on the mass shooting side, let's deal with the mental health issue once and for all. Let's get people the help and the treatment that they need, and let's talk about it so people don't feel as if it reflects on them. Let's make them feel as if it will reflect on them if they don't ask for help, rather than if they do. And that would be my solution to it. I will turn back around.
I have a question about Alzheimer's. My mom has early onset Alzheimer's. She's only 64, and she hasn't been able to speak or walk for 2 years. So I never imagined I'd be dealing with this at this age of my life. What would your administration do to help find a cure by 2025, which is the goal?
We're not investing nearly enough in the 4 major diseases that are causing the most suffering and the most expense in our society right now: heart disease, diabetes, cancer, and Alzheimer's. Those 4 diseases are the diseases that are causing the most suffering, the most loss in our society, both loss of real life and loss of quality of life, like is going on with your mother right now. And they're costing us the most money in our health system, our Medicare and Medicaid systems. So we need to invest more money up front to defer that cost on the back end and also to improve quality of life. And so what I would say is it's a disgrace when this president, who has run up more debt than any president in American history, last year increased the National Institutes of Health budget 0.1% and cut the National Science Foundation budget 4.3%. We will not find cures and treatments for these diseases if we're not investing as a country in them. And by the way, that's a fraction of what gets spent, because the private sector and our pharmaceutical companies and others are spending billions of dollars in partnership with the NIH and the NSF to try to develop these new treatments. We need to put more money into that. And it's one of the reasons that I've talked about entitlement reform. We need to take some of the money from entitlement reform and invest it in the health of the people who are getting entitlements up front, rather than spend all this money on the back end after they get sick. Because then they have an awful quality of life, and it's more expensive for us than if we had made the investment up front. So what you would see in a Christie administration is a significant increase in the budgets of the National Institutes of Health and the National Science Foundation. It's not only good for the health long term of our country, but it is a smart investment for the technological cutting edge nature of what we want our economy to be. If we want America to continue to be out front with the newest inventions and the newest ideas in health and in other areas, we need to invest the money in it. And we're not doing that now. What we're doing is 71% of every federal dollar that's spent, 71 cents of every dollar is spent on entitlements and debt service. We're spending 71 cents of every dollar looking in the rearview mirror rather than looking through the windshield. In 1960, when John Kennedy was elected president, it was 26 cents on entitlements and debt service. We were spending 74 cents looking ahead. That's how we got to the moon. That's how we started to cure disease. That's how we became the technological leaders of the world, because we were spending the money going forward, not looking backwards. And that's why I'm the only person in this race with an entitlement reform plan, because no one else wants to talk about it. But man, they asked Willie Sutton why he robbed banks. And he said, I robbed banks because that's where the money is. You want to fix this government? You better go after the place where they're spending 71 cents every dollar and stop arguing about the 29 cents, because you're going to go broke arguing about the 29 cents. So we need to fix our entitlement system. Go to chrischristie.com. It's on there. It's a 12-point plan. It's been scored by the Congressional Budget Office. And I am the only candidate, Hillary Clinton, Bernie Sanders, Marty O'Malley, and the other 11 Republicans. None of them have put forward a plan. I have. And I'm willing to stand by it. It's tough, and some people aren't going to like it, but too bad. We got a big problem to deal with. You want to deal with $18 trillion in debt? You better start dealing with where we're spending this money, because that's where we're spending the money, and nobody wants to talk about it. I'm going to talk about it. And if that means I'm a one-term president, thanks for the memories. I'll do one term and I'll leave, but I'll fix the problem before I go. Yes, ma'am, right here. He's coming up right behind you, right here in the red shirt.
Gotcha.
Hi, mine is kind of the same as hers. I took care of both my mom and dad at home. Both passed away at home from Alzheimer's in 2001 and 2010. Mine is kind of the same aspect. What are you going to do for the caregivers? That's the big problem we're having to deal with, and having to work and try to take care
Sure.
of them. It's really hard when you're in the middle class.
It is really hard. Let me tell you what we've done in New Jersey, which I think has worked really well. We have moved from a model for that type of care to home care and away from institutional care.
Good.
And be able to pay. It's less expensive, and it's more comfortable for those people and their families. And so we're paying for home health care aides to be in the home on a regular basis so you can go to work and know that your loved one's being cared for. And it's becoming less expensive in New Jersey to do it that way than to pay for the big institutions that we've had before. Now, not everybody is appropriate for home health care. There's some diseases that are so severe that they need round-the-clock nursing care that you'd get. So we'll always have nursing homes available for those type of problems. But we need to move the Medicare and Medicaid system away from institutional care and towards home care, not only for cost, but also for humanitarian reasons. Folks are more comfortable in their own home and surroundings that they're familiar with. And their family doesn't have to then traipse off to these institutions, just visit them every once in a while, but they can go through the dying process with their loved one and feel as if they were there to help and support them and not have to give up their entire life in the process. So that's what we've done in New Jersey, and that's what I'd like to do nationally.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah, right in front.
Yes, sir. I'm baffled at the fact that
He doesn't need one.
I'm baffled at the fact that so many Catholics vote Democrat. I don't know if it's out of loyalty to JFK, but as Mother Teresa said, if a woman is allowed to kill her own child, it is the greatest of all possible evil. Nancy Pelosi claims she's a practicing devout Catholic. Debbie Wasserman Schultz, virtually the Democratic Party ran on abortion, period. I don't understand. I think if we'd all team up, we would win as conservatives and pro-lifers if Catholics voted Republican rather than the traditional Irish Catholic JFK way.
Well, as a Republican Catholic, I'd love to see that happen. But I want to answer your question seriously. I wasn't always pro-life. I'm a Catholic. I came to my pro-life position as part of my life. Mary Pat was pregnant with our second child. And we just happened to go to one of those doctor visits when she was at 3 months. And we went in for the visit, and the doctor, I came from my job, she came from her job. It was like this completely modern, this is how people do it these days kind of thing, right? So we're both going from work, we're running to the doctor's appointment in the middle of the day, and he put the Doppler, she wasn't showing at all, she was 3 months. He put the Doppler on her abdomen, and I could hear that heartbeat, rapid and strong. And I got back in my car, and this was 1995, so I was 32 years old. I got back in my car and drive back to work, and I said to myself, under my position, I said that's not alive. I mean, I just heard that heartbeat. That's a life. And it changed me. It changed me. I don't think that religion is going to change everybody. I considered myself to be a good Catholic at that point in my life. I believed in Jesus Christ. I believed in the Catholic Church. And I believed that I was a good Catholic. I don't think it's going to be religion, with all due respect, that's going to change this. I think what's going to change it is our conscience and our heart. And I think we need to speak to people's conscience and to their heart. And I think we need to do it in a way that's non-threatening. Because I think, unfortunately, in this part of our discussion in this country, it's an emotional issue and an important issue. And it's important to me. But if we go at people in a way that makes them feel like they're lesser, we close their minds. I want to open minds and open hearts. And I want to talk to people about what it means to be pro-life and why it's important. Because I believe that each of those lives is an individual gift from God. And I believe that only God can start that life and only God can end that life. And that's what I believe in my heart. And I talk to people about that. Now, I'm the first pro-life governor in New Jersey's history. The first one since Roe versus Wade. They all told me I couldn't win being pro-life in a state like New Jersey. I had political advisors all tell me, you can't be pro-life, you got to change. I'm like, well, I'm sorry, this is who I am. I think what people want to hear is honestly what you believe in your heart. And I think the only way we're going to change this in our country is to be speaking to people from our heart and to continue to work at it day after day after day. And I don't think that, going to any particular religion, whether it's Catholicism, other forms of Christianity, or any other religion, and saying to them, hey, listen, you now must vote for this person because of this one issue. Some people do it that way. Some people are single issue voters. That's their choice, though. We're not telling them they have to do that. And I think we need to be real careful about that in this country. Folks have the freedom to choose how they want to vote and why they choose the person they do. But I also think as a candidate, you have an absolute obligation, I have an obligation to let you know what's in my heart. So I've told the people in New Jersey I'm pro-life, even though a majority of people polled in New Jersey don't agree with my position. But 61% of them voted for me. So that means a lot of pro-choice people voted for me because I think they thought I was being honest with them. And the other thing I think we need to start talking about to make the pro-life position even more understandable and acceptable is to talk beyond the 9 months. See, I'm pro-life for the whole life, not just for the 9 months. Listen, those 9 months in the womb are the easiest time to be pro-life. They've done nothing to disappoint us yet. It gets real hard to be pro-life when they come out, and things happen in life. And I've talked about this in the context of addiction. We have an addiction crisis in this country that we're not dealing with. And I believe pro-lifers like you and me should be talking about the fact that drug treatment is something that needs to be given to every addict in this country that needs it. First reason, because that life is just as precious as the life in the womb. Now, you see the reaction to that. That brings people together because people say, wait, you're right. I mean, that life is precious. That 16-year-old drug-addicted girl on the floor of the county lockup who's addicted to heroin, she's an individual gift from God, too. She's somebody's daughter. And we need to show love and compassion to her, not only because it makes sense and it's smart and it can help rebuild families and all the rest, but because her life is an individual gift from God. And we need to respect that life in its broken and fragile state just as much as we need to respect the life in the womb from the moment of conception to the moment of birth. The same way we have to respect the life of anyone who's suffering from a disease, to not say that it's our choice when to end that life. So I don't believe in assisted suicide. And I don't believe in it because I don't think any human being should have the responsibility of deciding when life ends. But that God decides when life ends. And sometimes that's mysterious to us. And I'm sure at times watching your mom must be incredibly painful. But it's not up to us, in my opinion, to decide when that life needs to end. It should be up to God. Now, if we start having these conversations on the whole range, I think we'll win more converts to our side. Not by telling them they have to think that way, but encouraging them to start to think that way. That's what leadership is about, in my view. And so I'm in the same camp as you. I wasn't always there. I'm a convert. I'm a convert because of what happened in my life. We need to open up other people's minds and let them then make that choice. Because let me tell you, when you're a convert to this, you believe in it even more. Because you have come to that decision by your own free will and by your life's experience. Man, you really believe it in your heart then. And so that's the way I would deal with it. And listen, the political benefit of that is obvious to folks who believe what we believe. But we're not going to get to the political benefit until we start changing hearts. And I think we change hearts by talking about how every life is precious. No matter who in this room we're talking about, no matter what they're afflicted with or challenged by, that God has a plan for them, and we need to be a part of helping them reach that plan. Because we know that it doesn't happen by magic. So that's my view of it. Yes, sir, at the bar right there. Yes, sir. Yep.
Thank you for covering Governor. Since this is Iowa and agriculture, like you had mentioned earlier, what's your position on industrial hemp? Now, notice I did not say medical marijuana.
Right.
I did not say recreational marijuana. I said industrial hemp.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not for it. Here's the thing.
Why not?
I'm going to tell you. If you had any doubt about that, I'll end your doubt. I just don't believe that we should start going down that slippery slope. And I think it is a slippery slope. I really do. And, you know, I'm in a state that has medical marijuana. Okay, it was put into effect by my predecessor. So I enforce the medical marijuana law in my state because it's my obligation to. Like when I take the oath of office, I don't get to say, I swear I'll enforce the laws of the state of New Jersey that I like. I have to enforce the laws of the state of New Jersey. And if I can't get them changed, I got to enforce them. So we have medical marijuana in our state. I don't believe, when I look at the states that are beginning to go down this road, incrementally, because that's where it starts all the time, that it never leads to a good result. Now, I know there are people who disagree with that position. And there are people of good conscience who disagree with that position. But you have a right to know what I think. And if I were President of the United States, I'd be enforcing the federal marijuana laws across this country. I said to the people in Colorado when I did the debate out there, get high now. Whoa. Apparently a member of my staff is getting high as we speak, apparently. I said, get high now. Because when I become president of the United States, states are not going to be permitted to have recreational marijuana. I know industrial hemp is different. I recognize that. But I think it is part of a slippery slope that I, just as president, don't think is an issue that we should be confronting in this country and we should be permitting. People of goodwill can have different views. That's my view. Let's make sure I don't ignore the people back here. Yes, sir. With the Cubs jacket on, I believe. He's coming right behind you. He's got you, brother, right there.
How strong is your support for the renewable fuel standard?
It is rock solid because we have invested so much already in this technology that it would be stupid for us to walk away from it. And so I would implement the renewable fuel standard and make sure that it's fully implemented. And the reason for that is because we need to provide a full portfolio of options for folks around this country from an energy perspective. We need to be drilling for more oil. We need to be exploring for more natural gas. We need to be using coal where it's appropriate to use coal. We need to develop solar like we've done in New Jersey. New Jersey is now the third largest solar producing state in the country. You got to go to another bar because everyone's heard that now, but go to another bar and you'll win a few drinks tonight on that one. Who's the third highest solar producing state in America? Arizona and California are 1 and 2. That would be easy to get. Yeah, I dare you to find somebody in Iowa who's going to say it's New Jersey. No chance. You'll be drinking for free all night if you want on that one. In Iowa, I see what you're doing with wind turbines here. It's appropriate for this state. It works for this state. Continue to do it. Ethanol, in the same way, the renewable fuel standard should be part of that portfolio. America, our taxpayers, and our private sector have invested an enormous sum in this technology. We should not walk away from it and make it less viable, and that's why I support it. It is a practical decision based upon common sense and prior investment, and that's why I support it. Thanks for asking. All right, they're telling me I can take one more question, which means I will take two. And here's why. One, I want to remind all these folks that I'm still the boss. Now, you laugh and think that that should be known, right, as a given, right, that I'm the boss of this organization. But have any of you in this room run for president? All right, so I'm the only one in this room who's run for president. Let me tell you what it's like to run for president. Running for president is being surrounded every day by people younger than you who tell you where to go and what to do. That's what it is. And I'll tell you, this place right here, in the middle of this room, in this stool, is my only protection from the tyranny of the young. I'm in the center of this room. They can't take the microphone away from me. They try to turn it off every once in a while, and I'll just speak like him, and they'll be able to hear me. So we're going to take two questions. We're going to take one adult question, and we're going to take one young person question, because I haven't taken a young person, but you're going to be last. Okay, so we'll take one more adult question. We'll get this guy right here, because he's been really waving at me and stuff, and so I want to make sure I get him.
The biggest part of this $18 billion deficit is...
Trillion. I messed you up.
Social Security and Medicare.
Yeah.
What are we going to do about it?
All right. I was trying to drive you to the website, but now I'm going to just put you to sleep. Get ready. No, listen, I have a 12-point plan on this. I encourage you to go to the website and see it. I'll talk about 4 of the points, or maybe 5. So here's the thing. First, on Social Security. We need to understand that we have to raise the retirement age. And the reason we have to raise the retirement age is because we're all living longer. The average life expectancy of a woman now in America is 83. The average life expectancy of a man is 79. I see some of you ladies smiling. I want you to remember that 10 years ago, you had a 6-year lead on us. 10 years later, it's 4. We're gaining on you. And here's another thing. When it's down to 4 years now, that 4 years of vacation from us you're counting on the end of your life, you may not get it. We may catch up to you guys and you'll be stuck with us the entire time. No vacation for the women in this room. The import of that is when Social Security was developed, the average life expectancy was 65. 65. You got to retire at 62. It was a great deal for the government. You paid your entire working life into a fund, and on average, you collected for 3 years. And then we kept the rest of the money. A good deal for you. All right? Spouse would get some survivor benefit after that, but we'd get to keep more of the money than we paid out. But now, you're living 15, 20 years past your retirement age. It's a blessing, okay? We're lucky. Medical technology, pharmaceutical developments have allowed us to live longer and better quality lives. So we need to raise the retirement age. I say we raise it 2 years, and we phase it in over 25 years. So that means that it would go up 1 month a year for 25 years. So when Hillary Clinton tells you next fall, Governor Christie has a plan that's going to throw grandma off the cliff, right? It's the highest cliff in the world, man. It takes 25 years to hit bottom. So don't let her demonize us on that stuff. We need to do it. And for people who are on Social Security now, it won't affect them. For people who are close to Social Security, it'll affect them a month or two because it's only going up 1 month a year every year for 25 years. But it will affect our children, and it should, because, man, life expectancy is going to be in the high 80s by the time they get there if we continue on this pace. So we need to have that buffer, and it helps actuarially. Secondly, it is time to means test Social Security. Here's what I mean, so you know exactly what I mean. If you're making $200,000 a year or more in retirement income, now that means you've got at least $4 or $5 million bucks in the bank. Not your house, because your house is not throwing off income. $4 to $5 million in the bank. First thing I say to you is, God bless you, great job. You raised a family, you lived your life in this country, you got $4 or $5 million put away, good work. Second thing I say is, God bless America, because it's the only place you could have done it. And now you have a decision to make. Is a Social Security check going to change your lifestyle when you're getting $200,000 a year in retirement income? It's not. It's not. And I have to tell you the truth. I can't listen anymore to, I paid in for it, I deserve it back. I agree. But let me be the guy who brings you the bad news. The government lied to you and stole from you. That's what happened. All this money was supposed to go into a trust fund and not be touched, right? You know what they did. They took it. And they put IOUs in. Remember Al Gore from 2000? He talked about the lockbox. You remember that, right? And now listen, now you're thinking to yourself, do I really remember Al Gore saying that? Or do you remember the guy on Saturday Night Live playing Al Gore saying that? It really doesn't matter which one you remember for the purposes of this discussion. You remember the lockbox. The lockbox is filled with IOUs. So when folks like Governor Huckabee say, it's unfair to make the people shoulder this burden, my question to Mike is, well, then who's going to shoulder it, Mike? Who's going to shoulder it? This is like when I used to go to the store with my mother as a kid. And she said, you want to go to the store? And none of us ever wanted to go to the store. But all right, so we went, right? So, okay, I'll go. I'll help you with the groceries and whatever. So I'd go, and then I'd see something I wanted, right? So I said, well, listen, this is my chance, right? I went. So I said, Mom, can I have that? She'd say, sure, yeah, you can have it. I'm like, yes. Good move. I came to the store. She goes, all you need to do is go home, go in the backyard, pick the money off the money tree, and then bring the money back and buy it. And I'm like, well, we don't have a money tree. She's like, exactly. I listen to guys like Mike Huckabee and Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton, and I think the money tree's here somewhere because they say you shouldn't have to pay and you shouldn't have to suffer a bit. But well, who's going to then? I mean, listen, the government stuck it to us. So here's why I believe in means testing, in taking benefits away from those who have done the best. Because the other alternative, which Hillary Clinton will propose and Bernie Sanders has proposed, is to take the cap off Social Security tax and have you pay on every nickel you make a payroll tax on Social Security. This is my analogy for that. Let's say opened up a local bank here, and you deposited your money in the local bank, and the local bank went belly up. and you lost a good part of your money. And you know the guy who opened the bank. And then 2 years later, the guy comes back, he knocks on your front door, and he says, hey, by the way, I'm opening up a new bank down the street. I'd like you to deposit your money there. You look at him and go, hey, man, weren't you the guy who opened up that bank and I put my money in and I lost all my money? Like, why would I give you money again? He goes, oh, because I've learned. I know people in Iowa are really nice. There's no chance he's getting off your front porch with any of your money, right? Because you got burned once. Hillary Clinton wants to say to you, give us higher taxes, and this time, I swear, we'll put it in the lockbox and just spend it on Social Security. Why would we ever believe it? When a politician has a choice between raising a tax, cutting a program, or spending money in this box over here that nobody really is paying attention to, they're spending the money out of the box. It's the path of least resistance. So let's not take more money into a government that's already lied to us and stolen from us. Let's not pay benefits. We're getting at the same people because the higher payroll tax gets at the wealthier, and the people who are making money at $200,000 a clip in retirement are the wealthier in this country. So either way, you're getting to them. This way, you don't have to trust the government. You balance the books by paying less rather than taking in more. That's why I'm for means testing. And I know it's not fair. Let me stipulate, it's not fair, but it's the reality. And it's what I was talking about to that question before when she said, what can we do to help on the debt? Demand that people tell you the truth. Not one other candidate's talking about this. Not one. Not one. You know what Huckabee said in the first debate? I don't know if you remember, but Huckabee and I had this argument in the first debate in August back in Cleveland. You know what he said? He's going to put a tax system in to fix Social Security so that the pimps and the prostitutes pay taxes. Swear to you. Go back and listen. Now, I don't know what I thought running for president was going to be like, but I never thought I'd be on national television, 28 million people, and a candidate for president actually said the way he was going to fix Social Security was to tax pimps and prostitutes, right? Now, listen, I've been to 49 of the 50 states in the last 18 months. Only Alaska is unscathed from a visit by me, okay? I've seen a lot going on in those states. Let me guarantee you something. There are not enough pimps and prostitutes to fix Social Security. Donald Trump said, because the second debate then, I always get the entitlement question because I'm the only one with a plan. So he said, Governor Christie says this. What do you say, Mr. Governor Huckabee? Governor Christie says this. What do you say, Mr. Trump? Donald said, we're not going to have to make any changes because I'm going to make everybody so rich we're not going to have to worry about it. I don't even know how to respond to that. Like, really? We're going to make everybody so rich they're not going to worry about Social Security anymore. Like, I don't know. That'd be great. I'm for that, just to be clear. But I don't know quite how that's going to happen, right? And then I said to him, well, would you give up yours? And he said, yes. And I go, okay, that's a good start. Right? So on Medicare, same thing. Raise the eligibility age 2 years, phase in at over 25. And for people making over $200,000 a year in retirement income, we subsidize their Medicare only 10%, not 75%. Right now, we subsidize the premium 75%. So if you've got more money, we're going to subsidize it still, but we're only going to subsidize it 10%. All the steps, and we also talk about Social Security disability, which was going broke next year. And you know what they did? They stole 150, the Republicans in Congress, along with the president, just stole in that latest budget deal $150 billion from the Social Security Retirement Fund and put it into the disability fund. So if you didn't believe me before, that they take the money out of the box rather than raise taxes or reform a program, believe it, they just did it. So we need to do this. We cannot give the government more money. We give them more money, we're lost, everybody. They'll find a way to screw it up. And we can't allow that to happen. And maybe I'd become president and I'd stop them from doing it for 4 years or 8 years. But the next guy who comes is going to let them do it. It's too much of a pattern. So that's what I do on entitlements. There's 7 other steps in there. Go to the website. Not only are they detailed, but they're scored by the Congressional Budget Office on how much they would save. These 12 steps would save over $1 trillion in the next 10 years. That's real money. That's real money that we can use to solidify those programs and to invest in rebuilding our military and in working on the NIH NSF problem. Those are real solutions. And that's the difference, okay, between electing someone who's been a governor and electing someone who's been in Congress. In Congress, they just refer to the subcommittee
Sweetheart. Toss that to him.
The tyranny of the young. I'm telling you, man, they're testing me every day. But this is the difference between electing a governor and electing someone from Congress. In Congress, they just say, well, we referred it to the subcommittee and we filed an amendment and I voted yes before I voted no, and and then we went on break, and then when you're a governor, man, you got to fix it. They don't care. You don't want to hear it. Branstad hasn't gotten elected 6 times here because he said, hey, I referred it to the subcommittee. Let's see how they do. You elected Branstad 6 times, I suspect, because when Terry Branstad said he was going to do something, he did it. Or he died trying. That's the difference between electing a governor president and electing someone from the Congress president. Let's not make the same mistake again. Ronald Reagan never worried about whether he could do something or not. If he thought it was the right thing, he had been a governor of a tough state for 8 years. He knew how to get things done. He knew how to persuade us. He knew how to persuade Congress. He got things done. We need to go back to that model. And so this is another example. Why are the rest of them not talking about it? Because it's hard. And you know what? Some people may not agree. God forbid. Listen, I'm not running for prom king, everybody. And I'm not running for class president. I don't care if I'm the most popular boy in the world. I want to be the most respected president. And to do that, you got to deal with these problems. So now, these 2 young people over here, and I want to present this to my staff. Hope my staff can hear out there. You are from New Jersey, aren't you? And what town in New Jersey are you from? Livingston, New Jersey. Now, that's my hometown. That's where I grew up. And here's what's happening to me as I travel around the country. My staff can't believe it, but every place I go, there's somebody from Livingston. I mean, everywhere I go, these kids come to me tonight, they go, we're from Livingston. I'm like, I love this, man. It's going to drive the staff crazy. So another 2 people from Livingston. Make the note. Thank you, Dan. Make the note back there. So what's your name? Ariana. Go ahead. You got the last question.
My brother and I are from Livingston, and as you know, it's a really good school. It's a good school system, and along with a good school system, it has a good it has a good plan for it has a good education plan for special needs kids. Yes. What are your plans to Livingston as an example to bring that all around America?
Sure. Well, first off, you're right. It's an excellent school system. It produced me. And now it's producing you. And I'm very proud that you're here and happy that you're here. Listen, kids who face special needs and need special plans and programs need to be addressed in our country, and addressed in a very aggressive way. Because this goes back to my conversation with this gentleman. Every life is precious. And in New Jersey, for instance, as you probably know, we have more cases of autism than any state in the country. We have the highest rate of autism of any state in the country. No one really knows why, but we just do. And so we have enormous challenges. And so we're ahead of the rest of the country on dealing with this because we just have more people to deal with who have these challenges. And so what we need to do is to make sure that each school district in the country, not by federal requirement, but by moral persuasion, puts together an individualized plan for each one of these kids. Because each one of them is different. But each one of them is completely precious to their parents. And what those parents want is for that child to reach his or her fullest potential, whatever that is. And depending upon where you are in the developmental spectrum, that could be amazing in terms of achievement, or it could be limited. But whatever it is, that parent wants that child to reach the very best they can reach. The only way to do that is to deal with them individually. And that means it's expensive. We spend a lot of money on special education in this country, but we need to, because that child is no less important or precious in our society than the child who doesn't face those challenges. And that parent is paying taxes just like every other parent is paying. And they expect their government to be responsive to what their kids need. So I would talk about that and make sure that we encourage every state, as part of the standards that we talked about before, in reaction to the Common Core education question, which came from back there, I think, we would encourage each school district in the country to say, you have a special obligation to this population. And whether it's just a few children or whether it's more than a few children, you need to come up with a plan, an individualized plan that you sit down and go through with the teachers and with the parents to make sure that everybody's on board and everybody's on the team. Because every kid needs that in their education, but kids with special needs need it even more. They need even more attention at home. They need even more attention at school. And so we need to make sure the teachers are on board. And just this weekend, I went to a football game with a friend of mine whose daughter just graduated from James Madison University, and she graduated with both her bachelor's and her master's in special education. And so I got to talk to Jessica for a while at the football game on Sunday. She's now teaching in Northern Virginia, a large group of special ed kids. And not only the enormous challenge that is every day for her, but how rewarded she feels by just the smallest bit of progress that she sees these young men and women make. We need to be invested in that as a country, and we need to talk about it and make sure that we're encouraging people to do it. I think most Americans have that in their heart and are doing it and insisting on doing it, but we got to make sure that they do the very best they can. I don't want to make another federal requirement on this. That won't work. What we need is to be talking to people about why it's important. And if we talk about why it's important and we're providing the funding, which we certainly are in education in this country, to be able to do it, there's no reason it can't be done. And that's the way I would do it. And our school system does it. I call it ours because I graduated in 1980. When are you graduating? Oh, yeah, that makes me feel good. Livingston High School class of 80, Livingston High School class of 17. 37 years younger than me. Thank you, I appreciate that. But that's the way we would do it. And I think it's really important for us to continue to acknowledge that these children deserve every opportunity to reach their fullest potential. And what we need to do is make sure we give them the focus and the attention and the resources they need to be able to do it. And that's what I would do as president. So Ariana, thank you. And go Lancers. All right. So here's the deal. You've been enormously patient. My children traveled with me last week when I was in New Hampshire. And I asked the 19-year-old from Notre Dame, I said, so what'd you think? She came to a town hall meeting. And she said, your answers could be shorter. I'm sure she's probably right. Thank you for your patience tonight. Thank you for coming and listening. You know, when I go back to New Jersey after campaigning in Iowa or in New Hampshire, and people ask me what it's like, I tell them all the time that if they're cynical about our democracy, that they need to come to Iowa or New Hampshire. Because here we are on a Tuesday night, you know, after snowstorm, and we got 200 people in this place tonight who came here to listen to a guy running for president and ask me good questions, serious questions about our country's future, because you're trying to make your decision about who to vote for and who will be best to help to lead our country. Man, if that doesn't give you faith and confidence in our democracy, then nothing will. And so I thank you all for restoring to lots of people, myself included, in this country, faith and confidence in our democracy because of the way you're conducting yourselves in Iowa during a really tough, competitive, crowded, confusing, and entertaining race. Secondly, I'm not going to leave tonight without doing one thing that's really important, and that is to look all of you in the eye and ask you for your vote. I want your vote on caucus night. I'm not doing this to get a book deal. I'm not doing this to get a Fox News talk show, okay? I want to be president of the United States, and the only way you're going to become president is to do well in Iowa and do well in New Hampshire. If you don't, you're not going to be president. And so I know we're in the last 34 days, and I said we're in game time now, and I believe that. We're in game time now. But it's your decision. It's your call. And so I don't want you to think for a moment that I came here tonight just to answer your questions. I did, but I also came here tonight to ask you for your vote. People in Iowa are great about this, right? When you first start talking to them, they almost often say, and I wonder if this isn't like the manual, like the Iowa Voters Manual, where you say to candidates, very interested in what you're having to say, welcome to Iowa, and you're in my top 3. Right? How do I know? You told me, okay, I'm in your top 3. And for April and May and June and July and August and September and October and November, being in your top 3 was good. Hell, there's like 17 people that started. I'm in the top 3, good, hey, good, third, I'm in your top 3, I'll take it. Here's what I'm here to tell you tonight. I don't want to be in your top 3 anymore. It's too late to be in your top 3. You don't get to vote for 3. You only get to vote for 1. I want to be your top 1. And I want to do whatever I need to do to convince you that I'm the right person. And the best way I've found to do that is just to answer your questions and then let you make your judgments. Don't let anybody else make this decision for you. Don't let anybody tell you what's possible. I was proved over and over again that what people thought was going to happen don't happen. You all have confounded people over and over again over the years. No, nobody thought Mike Huckabee was going to win, he won. Nobody thought Santorum was going to win, he won. Right? Nobody thought Jimmy Carter was going to win all those years ago, he won. No one thought George Bush 41 was going to win all those years ago, he won. You guys confound people all the time. Make your choice based on what you believe in your head and your heart is the best thing for our party and for our country. And I will tell you this, no one will work harder. No one has worked harder to get where I am now than I've worked. And that's not to pat myself on the back, that's to let you know what to expect if I get there. I will work as hard as you can possibly work to make this a successful presidency if you give me the chance to do it. And I not only want your vote, I want your trust and your confidence too. Because your vote gets me to the White House. Your trust and confidence gives me the chance to be a good president. Because you don't have the trust and confidence of the American people as president, you cannot be a good president. And I want not just to get there. When I get there, I want to do good by you. I want to do well by you. I want you to be proud of the vote that you cast. And even though you won't agree with me every day, at the end of my days, I want you to look back on it and say, you know what? All in all, the guy did a good job. If I can have that at the end of however long I have the chance to be president, man, I will have achieved more than I could have ever hoped for in my life. Remember how great this country is. My great-grandfather came here on a boat from Sicily. He was a mason. He had $7 in his pocket. When his number got called in Sicily to come to the United States, my great-grandmother was 9 months pregnant. They had a big decision to make. Go to the back of the line, have the baby in Sicily, or get on that boat to come to America. And if they did, my great-grandmother knew she was going to give birth on that boat in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. She got on the boat. She got on the boat, and she gave birth to my grandfather in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. And my mother used to tease her father, my grandfather, all the time. She used to say to him, "You're nothing. You're not an Italian. You're not an American. You were born in the middle of the ocean." It was the only time growing up I ever saw my grandfather get angry. He would get all red in the neck, and he would yell at her, "Don't you say that in front of my grandson. I'm an American. They made me an American the moment I got to Ellis Island. They made me an American. I'm an American." He was so proud of it. He was so proud that his mother so desperately wanted to be an American and wanted her child to be an American that she got on that boat. And I don't know what the accommodations were like, but given that my grandfather had $7 in his pocket, I can't imagine they were all that great. And for all you women out there who have given birth, think about that one. Could not have been pleasant for my great-grandmother. But think about that. 2 generations removed from the guy born in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean to a father with $7 in his pocket. 2 generations removed. His grandson is running for president of the United States. This happens nowhere else. Nowhere in history, nowhere else in the world today does this happen. And so I will tell you that this is the greatest privilege and opportunity I've ever had in my life. And I'm enjoying every minute of it, if you can't tell. I am not one of these guys who's wandering around moaning and complaining about this race. You'll never hear me complain about it. Because I am Philip Grasso's grandson. And I am lucky to be here with you tonight, and lucky to have the opportunity to run for the office, the greatest office that can be offered to any human being on this earth. Be president of the greatest country, the most generous country the world has ever seen. And so I'm asking for your vote and your support, your trust and your confidence, and I hope you give it to me. And if you do, I'll work every day to make you proud. So thanks for coming tonight. Happy New Year to everybody. I'll see you again soon.